AJ, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, you are the mind behind Winters Tales. You're the creator of Castleton. But for anyone who hasn't heard of you, who is AJ Winters?
Ooh, what a deep question to start with. AJ Winters, I speak in third person now apparently, is a content creator in the TTRPG space, but first and formerly a storyteller. I tell stories on the internet, but when I realized there weren't a lot of female dungeon masters in the zeitgeist, this was before the summer of Abrea, I decided to build a D&D studio. Ended up being the first D&D studio in Australia, and now I am creating actual plays and content, potentially publishing a book later this year in order to showcase to the TTRPG industry, mostly in the US, to be like, hey, Australia exists, we're doing cool things, come check us out.
Love that. And I always like to start these conversations by hearing how this all started for you. So what's your origin story? How did you get started in tabletop games?
Ooh, okay. Very strange story. I was a teenager. My father took me and my mum to New York for a work trip. And unfortunately, the company that he worked for booked us into a hotel where DexCon 15 was being hosted at the time. So we walked through the revolving doors into a foyer of this hotel where fairies and fauns and elves were walking about. And it freaked my parents out quite a lot. But 16-year-old nerdy me was in heaven. So my parents ended up paying for me to attend the DexCon 15 weekend and just basically said, look, we understand everything we had planned with you involved is null and void. You spend the weekend doing this. And so I did. I knew nothing about it. I just knew I loved fantasy and storytelling, and I joined my first LARP. I learned how to play D&D for the first time, met a lot of incredible people. And then I took all of that back to Australia and went, hey, boom, let's play Dungeons and Dragons. Then it took me quite a few years to actually find people who would agree to it. But that was the origin story.
Wow, that's incredible. So that was a total coincidence, basically. You had no idea that that was even a thing, and you were just like, wow, here's the rest of my life unfolding in front of me.
Well, I was already writing and telling stories and making videos and things like that. That's been my entire existence from the moment I knew how to speak or write or hold a camera, old school. But D&D, and specifically being able to role play as a big elf or some sort of fantasy race, we've all fallen in love with something, whether it be books or Tolkien's world or anything like that. That kind of opened the doors to role-playing as a medium, because I already loved acting. And then I went into college and did a double major in creative writing and performing arts. And somehow, even though that some would say is a useless degree, which I also agree with, I ended up doing that with my life. I do creative writing and performing arts on a daily basis. So TTRPGs kind of merges that really nicely, because I can write and tell stories and act and be characters from far off lands. So yeah, I think it was a complete coincidence, but I ended up finding the dream life at 16.
So let's talk a little bit about Winters Tales, Australia's first D&D studio. I heard you say this at PAX.
Yes.
And I was like, that sounds so awesome. So how did you start this journey?
Sheer willpower, mostly. I was working a job at the time doing marketing and social media, and COVID struck. So I had permanent work, luckily, because of JobKeeper and the income coming in. I stored all that up, and I decided, while I was streaming and playing characters on other people's channels and learning how the streaming industry of TTRPGs works, I started plotting. I make it sound so villainous. I started plotting what I wanted to do with a studio and a set and a tech desk and lights and sounds that could change, and invested a lot of money into building that and designing the entire set and painting it and doing all the things, making all the props. And then my dad saw what I was doing, didn't understand any of it, and taught himself how to program lights, and also helped us rearrange the full tech desk, learnt audio as well. We invested in top quality mics and cameras and all sorts of stuff, and then set out on this journey. It was the first space that had everything a studio would hope for, as well as the ability to have live sound design. So we had tech people sitting beyond the set who could change the sounds and the sound effects and the music as we were going through our actual play for our first show, which was incredible. That's when I started promoting it as the first D&D studio, because I started researching and seeing if there was anything else like that in Australia, and there just wasn't. We did that, and it was very strange to proclaim that, because you're always waiting for someone to come out of the wings and be like, that's not true, or you're not really a studio, or any of those sorts of things. But it was, and then that got us through a lot of doors to be able to continue striving forward in the TTRPG space.
And was this your first endeavor into building a studio even? Have you ever done anything like this before?
No, I hadn't. I have a background in theater and set design, love interior decorating, and just kind of put it together. I looked into how the original sets for Critical Role and Dimension 20 were built, like camera angle wise and where you sit players and stuff like that. And then sort of just put it together in the space that we had and did all the measurements and designed all the little doodads and props and edible things on set that I could give to my players and unexpectedly make them eat something gross role-playing. It was an endeavor, but something that I have quickly learned about myself over the years. When I'm determined to make something happen, I do it.
And something that you must have been incredibly determined to make happen, because you've just done something that, from my perspective, appears like a total phenomenon. It's Castleton, right? I'm wearing one of the hats right now.
Yeah, I noticed.
And let's just start at the beginning here. For anyone who happens to be living under a rock and hasn't heard about Castleton, what is Castleton?
So Castleton is an actual play campaign with over 120 cast members that are all TTRPG content creators out there in the world. It is a story that was pitched to everyone as Bridgerton meets the Hunger Games in a D&D setting. And it took off very quickly. And we told a story with over 120 characters. And it quickly became more Love Island meets Game of Thrones. But it happened, and we landed the plane. The story ended, and it ended well, which is crazy. But that's Castleton. That's what I strived to make happen.
I feel like this is where we have to just have the big question here of you talked about one incredibly difficult endeavor that you decided to embark upon with creating Winters Tales, Australia's first D&D studio. And now Castleton seems like even more difficult in some ways.
Yep.
What's going on? Are you a glutton for punishment? What's happening here?
Long story told short, I've had an incredibly dark past of very bad mental health and all sorts of stuff. I got out of that, and I live by the quote, you don't know how far you can fly until you spread your wings. So for me, it is having a dream or having an idea and trying it and seeing how far you can go. So that is what I tend to do. I have a concept or an idea and I strive to make it happen, and then it does, because you get excited about it, or other people get excited about it, and suddenly you're conducting a 120 plus person TTRPG campaign on the internet,
Take me back to the beginning of it, when this idea starts to formulate in your mind and then you start reaching out to people. Just talk me through that stage of the process. What was it like?
So we finished up our second anniversary stream for Winters Tales in December of 2023, which was the 48-hour calamity. We told a story over 48 hours with 7 different games. The world was destroyed in the first game and rebuilt in 7 games, which was the tagline. We ended up winning a Crit Award for innovation in the TTRPG space, because no one had done something like that before. With 48 creators, I think we nailed the 48 hours and 48 creators in that one. And then I went I could probably do more. That was easy. I could do more. And the Hunger Games prequel had just come out, I think, in December of that month. And season 3 of Bridgerton was coming out in, I think, May. And I formulated this rough concept where I thought, oh, this could be cool. And the hierarchy would be fun to explore in a Bridgerton Regency style Hunger Games story where people have to fight for love, but there is this toxic hierarchical structure and the fact that they're kind of semi-forced to do it for their own political benefits and the whole matriarchal, patriarchal, and more political structures of the 3 mortal lands all going towards this thing. And then I made a video where I talked about the idea and said, if anyone's interested, hit me up. And that video blew up. And within 24 hours, I had over 100 people signed up to be on the project and all in a Discord. So that's how it started. And then I got on a video call with every single person who had signed up and we started talking characters and we built it from there. I ended up doing a chatterbox game with every player to help me determine what kind of play style or type of player they were. And then that informed me where they should be based in the world of the story. And then they built their characters and I put them into individual groups in the Discord, but it kind of grew from there. And we started recording this show less than a month after that video was first posted. So very short pre-production, which is, again, wild. Probably shouldn't have done that. The entire process and the entire show of Castleton was improbable. It shouldn't have worked.
Why do you think it shouldn't have worked? What was the element that should have stopped it from working?
Conducting a story with that many people is really difficult. You have to weave together the storylines of all those characters, and you have to manage all of those players as well. Having that many people in a Discord server who are TTRPG content creators or performers, you should have run into more problems than we did. There's going to be jealousy, there's going to be conflicts, there's going to be differences between people that will spark tension and drama, not to mention that every single one of these people are content creators, so they have their own schedules, they're making their own content. So competition can be a thing that starts to divide people. But everyone was so passionate about this idea and this story and the community that we formed around it because we were all driven to make this a reality and to tell the story. We had a sensitivity consultants group formed pretty early on to handle any sort of issues that arised. And we ended up having to remove a few people from the project as well. But we had to do that in the most delicate ways with interviews and investigations because we couldn't remove people from the project just because someone else had given us information with no evidence or anything like that. So there was full behind the scenes deep dives and research into potentially problematic people involved. And then we had to make statements and all of that kind of jazz, but nothing got out into the space, nothing became toxic, nothing turned people with pitchforks against us.
Jeez. And you managed to avoid all of these pitfalls. And then where are you up to now? You said you landed the plane.
Yes.
Is it over? Is the story done?
No. Well, the story's done, but the project isn't over. We finished the story. What was originally meant to be 9 episodes got extended into a part 2. So we ended up running this project for over a year. And the finale episode, it was meant to be, part 2 was only meant to be 12 episodes. It ended up being 16, with the finale episode being, I think, 9 hours of a stream because I needed to finish it. If I split that one into 2, I would have been potentially comatose from all of the stress and workload that I was doing. So it ended up being 16 episodes for part 2. And we wrapped that in the second week of March, I want to say, when this was meant to end at the beginning of Feb. The finale got intense. When we had wrapped that, we were also doing a lot of fundraising through the project because people could donate to have things happen or keep characters alive or give magic items and things like that, similar to the sponsors to Hunger Games participants that we set that up early. And all of that money that we raised got to, I think we smashed the 150% over the Ko-Fi goal, which meant that we are going to put together a Kickstarter campaign to produce a setting book for Castleton.
So that's the next big thing on the horizon.
Yes.
But are you even more of a glutton for punishment? Are you going to expand numbers? Do you have can you tease anything for us? Is there anything coming in the future content-wise?
Oh, future content-wise. Oh, plethora of things. I have the next project that I want to do is already in the recesses of my mind stirring, but I'm trying not to focus on it because we've got to go through the Castleton Kickstarter first. And I cannot put another thing into the spinning plates of projects around me without, again, burning out even more than I already had with Castleton the first time. So there are some things in the works. It won't be 120 plus characters. The next project is capped at 70. And I know that still sounds huge, but it needs to be capped at 70 for creative reasons.
What is it about these big dynamic games with all these players? What gets you so interested in this? I'm curious.
So for me, collaborative storytelling is one of the most beautiful things that you can do in the world, in the space. You're telling a story with multiple people and people who have different backgrounds, different histories, different experiences, and they can all bring something new to the table that makes it so dynamic and intriguing. It's why I'm also such a big advocate for diversity in the space, because if we're all very similar telling the same story, that's not going to be entertaining. It's not going to be new. And I also think pushing the boundaries of what you can do is one of the most exciting things to me. I mean, we wouldn't have gone to the moon if we kept on saying things like, oh, that's not how it's done, or no one's done that before. So for me, I never wanted to replicate a formula of someone else's work, because why would I need to? You can make your own formula or try new things. And even if it hadn't have worked, I still would have been very happy that I tried. So I think for me, that's the aspect that comes from it, the collaboration. The giant cast was an accident that I ended up running with, and also then ended up adding more characters to it for part 2, because it ended up being possible. And I think that was the most exciting thing to me, to find out that you can do it. I do not recommend doing it, but you can do it. You need a lot of things in place before you try something like that. I have so many pieces of advice and too little time to get into it, but I think for me, I want to try and tell stories differently, and it doesn't always have to be a large cast. For this next project, I want to go dark with it. Castleton ended up being a lot more PG than one might expect. I think the Regency element to it made it very PG, but the next story that I do, I want to dive a little bit more into horror, a little bit more into folklore, a little bit more into the sexual side of things as well. And so the group of people that I end up casting for this thing need to be very specific. And there's going to be a lot more pre-production in order to handle all of those topics and all of those things really safely, to be comfortable with the people that you're working with, and to be so trusting and tight locked in like the faith of what we're trying to tell together, so that is possible. Less about size of cast or like size of project, more about what can we do and how do we do it. The reason the next one is 70 is because of the different moving parts to it. It's like 7 groups of 10 or something, but the theme of that one is going to be the most tricky part, and I think something that we haven't seen in the TTRPG space, not to the extent that we're going to try and go to safely. Yeah.
Wow, that's super cool. And I like that you've said it's not the size of the cast, it's what you do with it, is what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's never about size.
AJ, I have a bunch of recurring questions that I ask everyone in these interviews.
Love it.
But we've used up all our time talking about Castleton. So I'm going to bring this chat to a close, and I'm going to bring you back in the future to talk about this Kickstarter, to talk about this next horror story. There's so much cool stuff on the horizon. But before we do wrap things up, if people want to find out more from you, where should they go to follow you?
You can follow me either my personal social side, which is everything under AJ Winters VO, or if you want to follow any of the Winters Tales stuff coming out, we have some intriguing things plotted out. We'll be announcing them soon. You can go to any social media platform at Winters Tales Co. or Twitch and YouTube Winters Tales, find Castleton if you haven't seen it. We'll be releasing all the episodes over the next couple of months, and we're also going to be doing shorter versions of the story. So all of the VODs will go up the way that they were streamed, but we're also going to do like a condensed speed version of the show. So if you don't have over 200 hours to watch all of the show, you can watch the, 30 to 45-minute chunks, or however we'll cut it together to be short.
Oh, love that. That's very cool. AJ, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for inviting me. It's been a great time. I look forward to part 2.